Home educating was difficult in France before President Macron announced a new law in October 2020 to reinforce respect for the principles of the Republic as part of the fight against separatism. Amongst other things, this made attending school mandatory for all children from the age of 3 and restricted home education to children with severe health issues. In this video, I discuss with HE mum Helen her experience of the French inspection scheme prior to the introduction of this law and how it motivated her family to move to the UK. She also tells me about the more recent experiences of families in France now that Macron's changes have come into force. This of course is relevant to what home educators in England and Wales may face if the changes proposed in the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill are implemented. This afternoon I'm having a conversation with Helen. I met Helen recently at one of the demonstrations. It was the one in Birmingham, and Helen told me she was a refugee, a home education refugee from France, and I was immediately interested in her story. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Helen kindly sent me a link to the history of home education in France, which was a really useful website once I managed to get artificial intelligence to translate it for me. I just want to tell you where they began, because it was very similar, but I like the way it's spelt out. Back in 1882, in the law of Jules Ferry, it stated compulsory instruction may be given in public or private schools or in families by the parents or any of them or any person of their choice. I think that's a really good starting place, and that's where it really should have kept. But the story in France moves quicker than it has done here in England and Wales. And so, Helen, would you like to tell us something about how you come to know about France and what your early experiences of home education were?
Yeah, so I moved to France when I was 6 and I went to school there. So I went through the whole of the school system. And I think the school system there has really strong values that come from that Jules Ferry law. Strong values of school being free and what they call laïque, so secular, non-religious, and compulsory. And that's what we were always told at school, is that those were the values of school. It's free, non-religious, compulsory. And I didn't really know about home education as a child. I'd never encountered it. But when I was 17, I met an American who was homeschooled. And I thought, oh, can you even do that? And I was really intrigued. And my experience at school wasn't bad. Well, yeah, I mostly enjoyed school, but when I got to the end of it, I thought I wasted a lot of time. I think particularly in secondary school, in the French system, I was really wanting and able to learn a lot at that age, and the system just didn't allow for it. So that's why I was intrigued with home education. And when I had my first child, I always wanted to home educate. So I wouldn't say that there was a starting point for home education. Well, the starting point was both the first child, really, but I was interested in it before that. And in France, most children go to school when they are 3. They go to sort of a preschool, but it's long days. It's from 8:30 to 4:30, but you have about 2 hours off at lunch time. So most children go to school at 3. And compulsory school at that time started at 6 years old. And so that's changed since then. But yeah, so when my first child was 3, I wanted to home educate, and I really didn't think she was ready to go to school, especially for long days. But she felt hard done by because we lived opposite a school at the time, and she would just stand at the window and watch the children in the playground and thought, my parents haven't got a clue what they're doing. It looks like so much fun. So she ended up going to school when she was 5. And it wasn't really because I wanted her to go, it was because she wanted to go. But also we moved house, and so we thought, well, we're in a new area, it might be a good idea to help her make friends and things. And so she went to school for 2 years, but it wasn't a very good experience for us. Well, the first year wasn't a good experience for us as parents. It was quite a good experience for my daughter as a child, but for us as parents, it was quite difficult. It felt a lot like being divorced parents who are co-parenting with the school. The teacher wouldn't say hello to us. She just had a few parents that she liked and would say hello to, and the rest of the parents she wouldn't even say hello to us. And a few months into my daughter being in school, we wanted to have a meeting with the teacher. And the teacher, well, my husband took the day off work. We arranged this meeting. And then when we got there, my husband and I, the teacher said, I don't feel like talking to you today. And that was it. There was no meeting. And we just wanted to know how our daughter was getting on, because school was a new thing for her and everything. But the teacher just sent us away. And then she wanted to take the class of 5-year-olds on a 4-day trip to the other side of France. She wanted to take them to the ocean. And so that was 1,000 kilometers away for us. It was really far. What's that in miles? I think 600 miles.
Yeah.
No, anyway, whatever. 1,000 kilometers. Yeah. It was a big trip for 5-year-olds. And the teacher didn't want to take any parents. She just wanted to take teacher friends of hers as other adults. And so there was a lot of parents weren't very comfortable with this. We tried to say to the teacher, well, maybe you could just take them on an overnight trip locally as a first school trip. But she wouldn't hear of it. And we had a meeting with all the parents and the teacher where she ended up leaving the room, slamming the door, getting cross. She really wanted to take these children on this trip. And so a few of the parents, particularly parents who weren't able to take their children on holidays, did want their children to go. And the school ended up saying, well, if any of the children don't go, then no one can go. And so the parents who did want their children to go were putting pressure on everyone else to say yes. Anyway, it was a mess. They did end up going on this trip. They came back. It was all right. I did end up hearing quite a bit later on from one of the other adults who went on the trip that it was quite disastrous. They traveled by train, and lots of the children were ill on the train, and they stayed in a center that wasn't really suitable for young children, and the food wasn't suitable, so they were feeding them things like oysters, and these 5-year-olds were just not eating. Anyway.
This must have been an incredible thing, because it's really stuck in your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, it was quite, yeah, it was stressful. We were worried about the children when they were gone. Anyway,
so
they were all right. They didn't experience it as something terrible.
But it sounds to me like it probably helped you make up your mind.
Yeah. It was one of those things. I mean, it was particularly because we didn't have a really trusting relationship with the teacher. We suspected that the teacher was overly emotionally involved with the children and didn't want any contact with the parents. So yeah, it was a bit troubling. Anyway, my daughter went up to the next class, and in the next class, now she was in proper primary school, and work was a lot more serious. And she was in a class where they had half the week in German and half the week in French, because we lived near the border with Germany, and a lot of people work in Germany from that area. So they wanted children to grow up understanding German. But so they had one teacher who would teach half the week in German, and another teacher who would teach half the week in French. But the German teacher would shout at them a lot, and she was supposed to be teaching them maths, but because they didn't really understand the German, it was very hard for them to understand the maths. And so my daughter was just scribbling in her maths book and wasn't following anything.
Right.
And yes, combined with the shouting, and then there were bullying problems as well. And she was just really, really miserable. And by the end of the year, she was coming up with tummy aches in the morning and reasons to not go to school. And by the end of that year, she was very ready to come out of school and be home educated. And she's been a very, very convinced home educator ever since.
From the little girl who was looking out of the window at the children going to school,
Yeah.
she learnt the lessons and saw there was something else. So when was it when you started saying we are now home educating?
So my daughter was 7 when we started home
Right.
educating. Yeah, so she just went to school for 2 years.
Right. And so what year was that, roughly?
2013.
2013, right. So
Yeah.
so that's the time we're looking at. And when you got there, when you got into home education, how was it? Because from what you've sent me on the law, I think by then it had already moved away from the Jules Ferry, I'll try and say it better, basis, and there was much more oversight from the state, wasn't there, by then?
Yeah, there was. So it was still quite uneven depending on where you lived, depending on the local authority you were under. Some of them were still not really bothering with inspections, but the one that we lived under did bother with inspections. And so we had a school inspection once a year, and we also had it wasn't supposed to be social services, but often it was. It was supposed to be that the mairie was supposed to just come and check that, I guess for safeguarding reasons, that the children were okay. I mean, talking humorously, I tended to call that inspection the one where they come and check that our children don't live in a cupboard. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit. I mean, I guess they do need to. I mean, I see why they feel the need to do these things, but as a parent, it's a little bit. Yeah, I mean, you feel a little bit. It's a bit intrusive. That they feel the need to come into your home to check that your children are okay.
I mean, it's a difficult one, we know, because there are parents who do not look after their children for their children's best. But at the same time, to do it to everybody shows a deep distrust of parents. And that's what I fear we've lost now, ever since the 2019 guidance came in England. Prior to that, it was generally accepted that the local authority should assume that parents were doing a good job, unless they had reasons to think otherwise, and then they could make informal inquiries. But of course, since then, the narrative has changed, and informal inquiries are now made of everybody, which to me means they're not informal anymore. They're actually, the local authority think it's a duty they have to do, is to make those inquiries. And it's not reactive to things might be going wrong. We've got reason to think they might be. It is proactive. We don't trust, and so on. And so that side, Helen, I think is very much that type of a parallel to what's happening here in England, maybe a bit earlier, but a direction of travel. But of course, you started in 2013. In England, the first real signs of problems and rejection of home educational freedom really began to come through in government policy in 2009 when Ed Balls and Graham Badman tried together to make the atmosphere for bringing in compulsory registration. And that fell through, but it had already come in by that time in France, and you're just saying what it was like going through it. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that the law changed. Well, changed in 1998. Um, but there was a bit of a lag in them actually applying the new rules. And so my understanding is before 1998, mostly there were no inspections and home ed families were just quite free to do their own thing.
Yeah.
But then from 1998, it started to become more that there started to be more oversight. So when we were home educating, obviously when my children were little, we had no oversight when they were under 6, but from the age of 6, we had these 2 inspections. So the sort of social services one was once every 2 years, and the school inspection was once a year. And they were quite serious inspections, I think, compared to what I've heard about in the UK. It was quite serious. They would come to our house and they would stay for about 3 hours. Sometimes it was just one person coming, sometimes it was 2 people coming. And they most of our experiences were that they would test our children for they would use sort of standardized testing, kind of SATs kind of testing, for 2 hours straight, and that was a long time for young children.
Yes.
But the first year we had an inspection, and it actually went really well. We had a nice lady who was pro home ed and who thought that what we were doing was great. And so that actually went well. It really, really depends who you're talking to. Depends who gets sent to your home, but you have no control over that. So it's a lucky dip.
Certainly is, and I know stories here. Even where we live in Shropshire, there was one guy. We never met him because we moved here when our youngest was older. But he had a really good relationship with most of the home educators.
Mm.
And he understood it, and that was fine. Then he retired and somebody else got the job, and it went the other direction.
Mm.
And this is one of the problems they can't guarantee, is the personality and the views of the person carrying out the assessment or the inspection. They just can't guarantee it. And unless they could, it is actually one person's personal opinion against the facts, and that can vary. So yeah, so you started with a really good inspector, but did that carry on?
No, and then our second year we had a different person, and it didn't go well at all. She was quite positive to our face. But then when we got the report afterwards, there were lies in the report, and clearly she had not liked us. I think a big factor in that one was that she judged us on our home, because they come to your house. So we were renovating our house it was a flat, but we were renovating it at the time. We were doing a full renovation. It was quite involved. And so it was a bit of a work site. So there was that. And we met other families who also had similar issues. If they had work going on in their house, their inspections didn't go well, which is a strange thing. But I'm not sure. I think people just maybe the inspectors come and see a work site and they think, well, this isn't a safe environment for children, or maybe they just think, oh, it's not looking very nice right now. I don't know. Don't know what
Who
their reason
knows?
is, but I mean, it's part of life, right? And if we're doing work on our home, it's to try and improve it. So
That went badly, and as you said, the report wasn't accurate. There was
yeah,
untruth in there.
yeah.
So, what was the result of that then?
And so I think another factor just on the state of the house is that obviously we didn't have a lot of money. I wasn't working because I was home educating, so we were living on one salary. And so we had hand-me-down furniture, was a bit mismatched. And so yeah, I guess our house just didn't look like an IKEA catalog or something. I don't know. But I think that really did make a difference as well. It had an impact. Um, and so yeah, so we got our report, and they wanted to do a second inspection that year. And in France, that's quite bad news, because if they do a second inspection and they're still not happy, then they give you a school attendance order, and that there's nothing protecting you from that school attendance order. And just because of how school had gone for my daughter, she really didn't want to go back to school. That would have been her worst nightmare at that point.
Yeah.
And we didn't really want her to go back to school. Um, so yeah, we really, really, really didn't want that school attendance order. Um, so I fought really, really, really hard against that report. I got help from a home ed organization to fight the legal side of it. But
Is that organisation still around?
yeah,
Well, in case anybody from France is watching this and they want help, what's it called?
so that one was Les Enfants d'abord, but there are a couple of other ones. There's the one whose website you looked at for the laws. That's called Laya. I'm not sure what that stands for. And I know that there's at least one other one, but the main one I was involved with was Les Enfants d'abord.
Right.
Um,
And they really helped you carry on.
yeah, yeah, they did help. They helped to write letters, particularly from the legal point of view, just arguing from a legal point of view and defending our rights legally. But so I had to fight on two fronts. There was the legal side, and then there was also just defending what we'd done in terms of education, and um, proving that the report wasn't accurate, that it didn't accurately reflect what we were actually doing. Because one of the factors, well, there were quite a few factors, but one thing that that the inspectors didn't like is that we were doing our home education in both French and English. So my husband's French. I'm Zimbabwean originally, but I grew up in France. I speak French. I speak French fluently. I've been through the whole of the school system. I really understand the school system and the culture and everything. Um, but they had an issue with us doing sort of half English, half French. And to me, it was really important to pass my mother tongue on to my children. So that was something that was very, very important to me. And we actually found it really difficult, because living in France, we found that bilingual children tend to take on the language of the country that they live in. And so they actually didn't speak very good English. We tried to do one parent, one language. So I would always speak English to them. My husband would always speak French. And so because I'd read a book about raising bilingual children, and that seemed to be the best way to do it, to help the children to be clear in their heads what was one language and what was the other one. Anyway, so yeah,
Yeah.
so they were getting plenty of French. They actually spoke better French than English. But
Yeah, I must say, you told me earlier that the school your daughter went to was bilingual in
yes,
French and
yes,
German, and how ironic that when you
Yeah.
started teaching as a parent in English,
Mm.
they then objected. Oh,
Yes.
I'm not suggesting, by the way, that's the French anti-English view, but I'm just saying it's ironic that the system couldn't say, well, we do this somewhere else. Why isn't it all right here?
But they do it somewhere else because they do it in German, but they also do it in English.
Right.
Later after this, I actually worked for a little bit in a primary school in the same city that we were living in, as an English assistant, helping with bilingual classes that were doing half of their week in English and the other half in French. So it's part of the actual government school system. It's an option within the school system.
Right.
But I think that the school inspector had a bias against that because they think it's really important for people to integrate, like for immigrants to integrate into the country that they're living in. But they seem to think that for some immigrants, I think. Whereas if you're an EU diplomat, your children can go to French state school entirely in English or entirely in other European languages. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I kind of get where they're coming from, that they want people to integrate, but I think we were very much integrated. When I arrived as a child, when I was 6, I didn't speak a word of French, and I think for me it was really good to go to French school. It really gave me an understanding of the language and the culture.
Yeah.
So I can see where they're coming from about the integration, but yeah, my children immigrate.
I suspect
They were
it's not
fine.
that they have a policy on it. It's more the fact that if an inspector, somebody who's doing the inspection, wants to find faults, it's one of the things that they can, oh, we'll use this as well.
Yeah.
And that. So the second inspection you've been talking about, that's another 3 hours, another 3-hour job, was it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was quite a long time ago now, so
Yeah.
memories
And then
fuzzy.
you obviously survived it, but what's it like after the inspection? Do they tell you before they leave, oh, we're happy now, or did you have to wait?
No, we had to wait. We had to wait for the report to come through. So that was about a month after the inspection that we got the report.
Right.
You don't really know what the outcome was until you get the report.
And as you said, this was a second inspection, so that was on a knife edge.
So, well, we didn't have the second inspection, right? So we had the
Right.
first inspection. So this is our second year of home educating. We had a first inspection. A month later, we got the report. The report said, oh, you're going to have a second inspection. And so then I fought very, very hard.
Right.
And we never did have that second inspection. However, they left us hanging till the end of the school year. They never said, no, your second inspection is cancelled. So we were expecting a letter any day. We were under constant stress. And if they sent us a letter to say, yeah, you're having a second inspection, I think they had to give us a month's warning, but we would just have that time to prepare and to be able, well, yeah, to try and put ourselves in a situation to impress them enough to not get that school attendance order. But it's not good news if you have a second inspection. They don't often go very well, because the person who inspected the first time already has a bias against you, so you'd have to really, really impress them the second time round. And it doesn't really leave you enough time usually to make a huge difference in your children's education between those two inspections, and particularly between getting your report and the second inspection.
You might be able to put an extra coat of paint on in some of the rooms in the flat, though, in that time.
Yeah, no, I mean, our renovations didn't go on for ever and ever. It was ongoing for maybe a year, maybe not even a year. And yeah, and then it was all finished, and it was nice.
Yeah. So this is a yearly cycle that you went through.
Yeah.
And how many years did you put up with it?
I think we did 4 years before we moved. Because
Right.
the thing is, the second year when we had our problem inspection, they didn't so one of the reasons why it was a problem as well is because my son, my second child, was now of compulsory school age as well. And he only read he only started reading fluently 2 years later than the French school system would have liked. So he was one of the youngest in his class group, or in his sort of age group. So he was supposed to start reading when he was 6, I guess, just 6, just turned 6. But he started reading when he was 7.5, 7.75. And he wants to be a writer now, and he really enjoys books. He loves reading, and that was my aim,
Yeah.
which is very different to the school system's aim. My aim was I wanted my children to enjoy reading and enjoy books and value books, rather than push them into reading before they were ready and put them off. But that was very much at odds with the school system. Now, in theory and in the law, they weren't supposed to expect us to stick to the national curriculum. But in practice, they did expect us to stick to the national curriculum. But that was actually unlawful. But it didn't stop them from having those expectations. Anyway, so yeah, so in the second year, we had a bad inspection. They said they were going to do a second inspection. I fought very hard against that with the help of a national organization for home educators. But I spent many nights up until 5 a.m. I had 3 children at that stage, and one of them was a baby. I was a mess. Like if you look at photos of me from that time, I looked terrible. I was so tired. But yeah, I had to fight very, very hard to get that second inspection cancelled. And I did in the end, although they left us hanging till the end of the year. So we were living under stress and suspense. But what they said is, okay, so we'll cancel the second inspection, but from now on, we're going to send the head inspector to do all of your inspections. And so that's what they did. So the following year, we had this guy, and he did not like home educators. And his whole identity, his whole career was built on the values of school and school being good for children. And yeah, that was what he lived and breathed. And he was close to retirement, so he had spent his whole career defending the school system and I guess trying to make schools as good as they could be. Just by being who we were, it seemed that we were an insult to who he was and what he stood for. And we were not anti-school or anything. I think, for some families, I mean, it's really good that school's an option. Some families need that as an option. A lot of families choose that as an option. And we're not anti-school. We're just, our position is we would like educational freedom. We would like parents to have various options and be able to choose what's best for their family. Anyway, so we're not anti-school, but he considered us to be an insult. And so yeah, it didn't go well with him. He was not respectful of our children or of us. He made our children feel terrible.
Yeah.
Made them feel very, very stressed out over these inspections. And he would expect them to do things that they were not prepared to do, or that they hadn't learnt yet.
Yeah.
Because before the inspections, we were supposed to send in a document saying what we'd been doing in terms of education, what our educational philosophy was, but it was a lot more involved than what we do, I think, in the UK at the moment. It wasn't just educational philosophy. It was we would list everything that we'd done that year, all of the materials used, the
Yeah.
the things our children had learned, like where were they at in their education, but in a very detailed way.
Sounds to me like the inspection was then to make sure you weren't lying, that this is what we've been told they can do. We better check it.
No, because they weren't checking against what I said my children could do. They were
Right.
checking against the national curriculum.
Oh, right.
And so those were two different things.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that didn't go well. And it wasn't just that they were checking against the national curriculum, it's that they expected my children to be top of the class level in the national curriculum.
Yeah.
And for some children, that would be fine. My children are not particularly academic. They struggle quite a bit with academics.
Right.
And that was not fine. We were not going to measure up whatever we did. And so it's not as if we weren't even unschoolers, right? If we were unschoolers, we would have had an even worse time.
Right.
We,
Yeah.
we were, I would have said we were semi, I don't know what you call it. So we did sort of semi-formal schooling. We've always done, when we lived in France particularly, we always did French and maths in a structured way. And we tried to be very literature rich as well. So lots of read alouds, lots of books in the house, lots of exploring interests. So yeah, we would do all the other, especially when the children were young, we'd do all the other subjects in quite an interest-led way, like science, history, geography, all of those sorts of things. And we'd just explore the world. But yeah, we did do things in a structured way for the sort of the main subjects. In my mind, we weren't that far out of line, because before our first inspection, my attitude to it was, I'm actually quite proud of what we're doing. I think we're doing, I'm working really hard to give my children a great childhood and the best education I can give them. And I'm really happy with what I'm doing generally. I mean, you know, I have my
Yeah.
limits, but I mean, generally, I thought I was doing a good job,
Yeah.
and I was happy for them to come and see. That was my attitude before the first inspection, and it actually went well. The second year, we were actually doing better with our structured education than we were the first year, but that's when it didn't go well. And yeah, now I've lost my train of thought.
Well, you were talking about them. Let me come in, because it's been
Yeah.
striking me while you've been talking, Helen. One of our sons and his family live in a rented property, and the agents check the state of the property once a year.
Mm.
And our daughter-in-law always dreads the day of the inspection.
Mm.
And I'm just wondering, as time's going on, from what you wrote, you got to that state, didn't you, where these things began to be quite a trauma, seeing coming up and waiting for the results. Do you want to talk a bit about that and how that led on to your decision that it was time to leave France?
Yeah. So with the head inspector guy, he would really make the children sit down for 2 hours and test them continuously, and I would always try and argue with him before the inspection, and I found information on the sort of school system website that said, well, when you're 6 years old, you can concentrate for, say, 15 minutes at a time, and when you're 7 years old, maybe 20 minutes, something like that anyway, and it went up with the ages. And so I said, well, would you please stick to that and give them breaks? And the first time he did, sort of, but the second time he came, he didn't give them breaks at all. It was just 2 hours straight. My children were an absolute mess by the end of it, and they couldn't answer straight. So he thought they weren't doing well, but they were just beyond the concentration that they were capable of. So yeah, that was a thing. Another thing during those inspections is for my husband, a really bad, really low point was so two inspectors came. One of them was working with the children, and the other one took my husband aside and tried to sort of cause division between him and me, and was saying things like, well, are you sure that you agree with what your wife is doing? Don't you think that as a father you should be that you should override what your wife thinks, and do something better for your children by putting them in school, kind of thing? And my husband was very, very cross that they did that. Took it very badly.
Yeah.
Because he had never been a driving force for home ed. It was more me, but uh, yeah, he didn't like that they were trying to cause division between us. And I think gradually as the years went by, he became more, he saw my point of view more, and he became more convinced about home ed. Anyway, so yeah, that was one of the bad things that happened. But just it put us under a lot of stress, because when we first started home educating in France, I thought, yeah, so I'm happy with what we're doing. They can come and see. It's just one day a year. They can come and have a look. That's fine. But then it ended up being, well, we know that this inspection is coming, and so we've got to work really hard on our academics for, say, the autumn term, because the inspection was often maybe January, February kind of time. It can vary, but that was our experience. And so during the autumn term, we really had to work hard, hit those academics, make sure we were up to scratch. But it put pressure on us. It put pressure on our children as well as on us, because there's only so much that they can do, especially when they're young.
That sounds to me like what stats do in schools.
Yeah,
They put pressure on the teachers and on the children.
yeah.
Just the same. Carry on.
Yeah. So it was kind of like having SATs every year, probably. I mean, I
Yeah,
haven't been through the British school system, so I haven't really experienced SATs myself. But
yeah.
yeah, it
Well,
was
I'm too
probably
old to have
similar.
experienced them, but don't worry about that.
Um, so yeah, so it was a lot of pressure for, say, 3 months or 4 months before the inspection. We felt like we couldn't go on lots of outings. We had to be at home doing schoolwork most days. And it did put a lot of pressure on us, especially as a young family. When we started home educating, we had a baby the following year. And I think as home educating families, we need that flexibility to just roll with the punches. And there are seasons of life where you can do more academics, and there are seasons of life where you just need to take your foot off the pedal a bit and deal with other things. So I really appreciate that freedom as a home educator, but the school system expects you to make linear progress, and my experience is that doesn't really work well with real life. My children do not make linear progress. They make a ton of progress in one go, and then they stagnate for a long time, and then another ton of progress in one go. Anyway,
I think most people are like that. We
yeah,
just learn at different rates in different ways, and the school system doesn't recognise that at all, whichever country it's in. It's very similar to being in the army. You do everything at the same time together in step, and that's it. And it's not real life.
yeah,
Most adults, when they become adults, learn differently to what they ever did in school, and
yeah.
that's probably their natural way of learning. So, where did all this come to get you to come to this decision that France was no longer for you as a family?
So yeah, so the I mean, it wasn't only the home ed aspect of it, but home ed was part of it, a big part of it. Um, So yeah, just to finish describing how the year went when we were living there. So you had 3 or 4 months of stress trying to get up to the right level for the inspection. Then you have the inspection. do a major clean of the house, like several days kind of thing, cleaning and tidying and organizing, trying to make it look okay before the inspection.
House inspection again.
Yeah.
What my in-law goes through.
And then you have a tense month where you're waiting for that report back, because you don't know how it went till you get the report. And then once the report comes, if it didn't go well, then you've got to fight that, or else you've got to prepare for the second inspection. And basically that takes up most of the school year. It ended up kind of from thinking in the beginning, right, I'm happy with what they're doing. I'm happy with some oversight. It sounds reasonable. They can come and see. It's just one day in the year. We went from that to actually taking up most of our year and casting a shadow of stress over most of our year. And that was no good. And it took away a lot of confidence from my children. My children were not confident in their skills or in the education they were getting. The inspector was saying things like that they'd never amount to anything, which is not true. My eldest is now 18 and is preparing to go to audition for conservatoires. She does a lot of music. She's done very well with her music. And so no, she's not terribly academic, but she's found what she is good at, and she's doing well. So all of those prophecies of doom of, oh, your life's just going to be a failure and you'll never amount to anything. No, that's not the case. But we did have to hear all of that stuff. And our children had to hear all of that stuff, and it doesn't do them any good. So yeah, so there was a lot of stress, a lot of admin, because all of these reports and things, all of this exchange of information that the local authority never really seemed to read properly. It all took a lot of time for me to put together, and all of that's taking time away from what I could have done with my children. So it's a lot like teachers in schools in the UK. My understanding is they have a lot of admin, and it's not really helpful to put that load on them. It takes away from what they can do with the children, possibly, and it puts them under a lot of stress. Anyway, so that's what I was under. And so yeah, it's just a huge administrative burden. And you never know what they're going to allow you to do next year or not. Are you going to be allowed to home educate? And there were also rumblings, I think, before we left. I'm not sure, but I think before we left, there were rumblings of things getting worse. And they did get worse after we left. And so for us, leaving France from the home ed point of view was great. Because in the UK we've been under the radar, so we've had no oversight at all, and for us it's been a really good contrast to what we had in France. And my children have, I would say that they flourished under freedom in a way that they couldn't flourish under oversight. And another aspect in the UK that's not related to oversight is that their social circles are much bigger. In France, what we found is, well, the home ed world is smaller in France than it is in the UK. But then when you get to secondary school age, a lot of them go back to school. And I think part of it is just because the pressure on parents is so high that that a lot of parents don't feel up to getting their kids through the inspections in secondary school.
Yeah.
So with my eldest approaching secondary school age, we thought we'd come to the UK. And so that's been good for her socially, because her social circle would have dwindled if we'd stayed in France. But yeah, just the freedom that we have here is something that we appreciate enormously. And it gives children the freedom to grow at their own rate, and to learn at their own rate, and to explore interests that may or may not be on the curriculum. And And yeah, it gives us as parents freedom to do what's best for our children. So yeah, we really don't want to see that changing.
So time's running out.
Yeah.
Just let's get on to you. You moved. When did you come to England?
So we came to England in 2017, I believe.
Right.
End of 2017.
17. Yeah. And things in France began to change with Macron
Yeah.
in 2019, was it? 2021 or so?
I think the law came out in 2021.
Right.
And so what changed is they changed the compulsory school age. So it went from 6 to 3. So instead of starting in primary school, now the preschool was compulsory as well.
Well,
And so on paper that's from 3, but you actually start in the September of the calendar year when you turn 3. So if you turn 3 at the end of December, you're about 2 years and 8 months when you start.
right.
And so that's now compulsory.
Yeah.
Which is a lot. It's a lot for that age of children. They do have naps in the afternoon for that first year, but in the second year, no naps allowed. So when they're sort of 3.5, 4, between 3.5 and 4.5, they go into the second year and they're not allowed to have naps. And yeah, it's some children just aren't ready for that at that
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
So, but now that's compulsory. But that also means if you home educate, now you're inspected from the year your child turns 3.
Right. And
Uh,
I understand, perhaps you can just say how it changed as well, because now you much more have to get permission to home educate if you're in
yeah,
France. How,
yeah,
do you know anybody that's been through that? How's it working?
yeah. So yeah, I do know people who've been through that. So the numbers of home educators have really gone down since that law came through. Because so it used to be that we had to register at the beginning of the year, but that was a right. It was a right for parents to home educate. And so you did have to tell the authorities you were home educating and they would come and inspect you. But now you have to apply for permission at the beginning of the year in order to be able to home educate. And that's been a big change. And so I'm not sure I got my numbers quite right, but my understanding is that the numbers of home educators have halved in France since
I,
that.
I think something I read in from the page you sent me suggests that less than half of the people get approval.
So yeah, so the people, so some of them have just never asked for approval. They've just gone back into the school system. And then of the ones who do apply, yeah, less than half of them, I think, are being approved. Which has been very difficult because many families who've home educated for a long time are now being told, oh, you can't home educate anymore. And it's very dependent on where you live and which authority you come under and who's deciding. So it really hasn't been applied in an equal way at all. And so some families have gone into, I think they call it civil disobedience, where they don't apply, they just home educate. But those families are very brave and they've had to put up with a lot of grief. They often go through long court cases. Although I heard recently that one of those families went through a long court case, but the judge ended up saying that they were not guilty of anything and they didn't have any punishment for it. So that was really encouraging, I think, to the home ed
That is
community.
encouraging.
But to get to that point, these families have been through a lot of stress. Like I know a family who've been taken to the police station over home educating illegally and have had to spend time at the police station and until they were released again. I think they spent the night or something. But yeah, so families live with that fear of being questioned by the police.
The latest news in this country is if you complain about the school, you end up spending the time in a police cell.
Oh.
That's just a news item that's been around in the last week or so. A couple complained, and rather than address it properly, the school just told the police they were being harassed by these people, and they sent 6 coppers to arrest them.
Oh no.
Yeah. So you know, freedom is on the line in both countries, but it is good. I don't want to underplay the stress. I know a family in this country that have been standing up to get their data protection properly respected by their local authority, and they've been through over 5 years of stress and worry. And so anybody who is willing to protect their family and other people's families by standing up to a system that's shifting and taking responsibility away from parents gets my admiration. I hope more people do it, but they need to do it knowing it isn't a walk in the park. It has to be valuable to you, and you have to say this is worth all the stress and trouble for.
It is a lot of stress for those families. I really do appreciate the families who do it, but I think not every family's in a position to be able to do that. I think you've got to be in quite a strong position, maybe with a good support system around you, in order to do that. Anyway, I really take my hat off to those families. We weren't very brave. We just ran away, but we're not the only ones.
No.
A lot of French families did leave over the home ed issue, and well, I mean, a lot in our little world, and a lot would still like to leave over the home ed issue. And if they were ever like, we've got friends who say, well, if permission is denied for them in any year to home educate, that they'll move countries rather than put their children in school. So that's what people are facing, and this new system is incredibly stressful, because so you apply, and the application process is very, very involved. It would take hours and hours to put a good application together, and then you have to wait for an answer. I mean, it's even more stressful than when we lived there. So you wait for an answer, and then you're still dealing with the whole inspection cycle as well. And then for a lot of families, their application is denied, and then they have to go through that. There's a procedure to kind of go through the courts, I think, and get your application examined again. And a lot of families have to do that, and that's just more time and stress and everything. And by the time you go through all of that, you're nearly at September, when you're supposed to be starting your school year. And so you only find out if you can home ed or if your children are supposed to go to school quite late on in the process. And so yes, it's all very stressful. And then after that, if that's still denied, then you can keep on fighting. You got various ways of fighting, but all of it is, it's time and energy and money and stress, and it's just not good when you're trying to raise a family as well. It's no good for the children, or for the parents. It's way too much stress for what it is.
It reminds me, really, I think one way to put it is bureaucracy likes conformity, but it doesn't have compassion.
Yeah, very much.
It doesn't actually say, what are we doing with our rules and regulations? What are we doing to people? And it sounds to me that, your experience and also what's happening here, and with the amount of data the Department for Education are going to be demanding of home educators and so on, it's not about protecting the children, really. It's
No.
about getting people into conforming.
Yeah.
It's about, and they don't care, and they've got a ridiculous idea that it will only take parents 10 minutes a year to put the information on the database.
No. That's rubbish.
That's rubbish. They haven't got a clue. But again, you said, one of your inspectors was an old school teacher and wanted to run everything like schools. I think the Department for Education cannot think outside of the school box.
Mm.
It is routine, it is measured, it's all there. Where most home educators actually have a life of education that resembles life. It flows from day to day. It's never always the same. It's always different.
Yeah.
And okay, there are routines, but this is it. And so I want to thank you for that, Helen. It's been really useful. I hope people find it helpful, particularly informing this. From the first time we talked, my feeling for this conversation was to give it the title Nothing to Hide, but Everything to Protect.
Mm.
And
that's a really good one.
And I think that's really what I hope people will get to see, that actually, oh yeah, you can send your reports, but bureaucracy always demands more. It will never be satisfied. It has always got reasons not to trust people. And one thing that sticks with me, just to wrap up, in end of last year, when Lord Solly's private members bill was being debated, the minister, Baroness Smith of Malvern, criticised his bill. It was never going to go anywhere. Now we've got the Children's Wellbeing and Schools bill in the pipeline. His bill was never going to go anywhere, but she criticised it because it lacked any means of compulsion on parents to get them to comply. And that tells you where the state's at. It doesn't want to reason, it doesn't want to give good arguments for parents to do these things, how it will help their children. It just simply says, we're going to compel you to do it. And that certainly sounds like the situation in France, where they've gone to, where they were moving towards, from that very good starting place. They've got to this place now where really it is a trial to be a home educator. And as you say, many people are wanting to leave.
It is very much a trial to be a home educator. It's very difficult. And the people who do get approved are mostly people who stick to the national curriculum. People that the inspectors know, and they know that it's going to be easy for the inspectors to work with.